Arthur fell to his knees and began to weep. His foolish coming in and out of Joseph Duplessis's...
Let's head back to my room. Tomorrow is another day of the SCP, of the SCP Foundation. Close it. Head to bed. 7 in the morning. Let's head out and go to the courtyard. May as well. Chill here.
Vacant dead face. The ants were
Smoke a
huge
blunt
and spiny, with long curved mandibles. Ection bruxelli, a particularly hardy species of New World army ant. Arthur stepped back, babbling in terror at what had become of his brother. The Joseph suit stepped forward towards him, and almost instinctively, Arthur pushed him with both hands, feeling the nightmarish activity swarming beneath the loose cover of Joseph's bony chest. The Joseph suits tumbled backward, tripping over a rock, and burst. There were no organs left inside his brother now. They'd been eaten long ago. It was just a thin tarpaulin of gray skin over dry bones, and, of course, millions upon millions of ants, now making a beeline for Arthur with the frightening military precision any naturalist could expect from Ecton bruxelli. But while army ants could be a formidable and frightening foe in their own right, nobody had seen any ants like this before. Well, nobody who'd lived to tell the tale, at least. Arthur turned to flee, but sadly it was already too late for him. What he thought were mere prickles of anxiety were actually an invasion force of Ecton bruxelli soldiers, which had positioned themselves over key nerves and ligaments on his skin and spine. As Arthur tried to run away, the ants began to bite into him, cutting through skin, rending bone and munching into the chewy neurons underneath. Arthur felt intense flashes of pain all over his body before collapsing to the ground paralyzed. That's when the true horrors began. If there was one consolation for Arthur in this last terrible hours of his life, he would at least know firsthand exactly how his brother died. He couldn't move, but he could feel everything. The creatures chewed through the flesh of his extremities, cutting holes in his skin and creating openings for swarms of their insect brethren to enter through. Arthur felt like he was on fire as the swarm entered his body, but was unable to do anything about it. Death by these creatures is a slow and torturous experience. Unlike their non-anomalous counterparts, the swarms don't immediately start devouring all available soft tissue. SCP-2031 wants to keep their prey alive while they renovate their new home. Arthur finally died 2 days later, from dehydration. It was at this point that the creatures finally began eating his organs, and eventually distributing their colony throughout his body. The ants even produce an enzyme that slows the decaying process for their deceased hosts. That's why Joseph Duplessis didn't look a whole lot worse by the time Arthur found him, even though he'd already suffered a month of post-mortem infestation. Not long after Arthur's death, the Arthur suit got up and walked away. The world would never know how or why Arthur Duplessis and his brother disappeared in the dark heart of the Amazon jungle, but perhaps for the sake of all those who loved them, ignorance is actually kinder than the truth. It would be almost a century before the Foundation finally discovered these creatures on a nearby farm, designated them SCP-2031, and began containment and testing. They soon became aware of what Arthur, Joseph, and many others had learned the hard way. While they may be relatively ineffectual individually, together these insects were a real force to be reckoned with. Very few non-anomalous animals had any chance of escaping them once they'd set their sights on a target and began assuming their attack positions. In one observed instance, SCP-2031 soldiers were able to take down a 1,000-kilogram Angus bull in 5 minutes, most of which was just spent getting their soldiers into their proper positions over the spine and leg ligaments. The Foundation just got extremely lucky that these vicious insect predators happened to be isolated to some pretty specific areas in South America, thanks to the climate requirements of their habitats. In fact, pretty much all of the specimens the Foundation found were all in one place. The creatures had developed a particularly frightening form of ant farm, known as SCP-2031-A, an isolated containment zone on a stretch of farmland where the ants could find hosts in the form of live people and animals, keeping them relatively isolated. 27 separate SCP-2031 colonies were first found on this farm, inhabiting and operating 27 different corpses. These include 15 cows, 5 different horses, 3 domestic pigs, 1 dog, and most fascinating of all, 3 human specimens, an adult male, an adult female, and a child of unspecified gender. What's even more fascinating than the efficacy of these ants in attacking all different kinds of prey is their deftness at mimicking the behavior of their hosts. This isn't a reconstructive maggot situation. See our video on that nightmare for further information. The ants attempt to make their hosts actually act like the creatures they once were. The Foundation were astonished to see that the 3 human suits seemed to actually go through the motions of running the farm, watering the livestock, dispensing feed, moving other SCP-2031 colonies from one pasture to another. The human child suit would even spend extensive time playing with the dog suit, engaging in games such as fetch or mock wrestling. How the SCP-2031 colonies are able to do this is unknown. Working theories include rigorous observation of their targets before colonization, and the colony hive mind somehow picking up residual thoughts or muscle memory from their victims. Non-anomalous ants introduced to the SCP-2031 colonies also begin exhibiting anomalous traits, so the effects may somehow be contagious. One of the most fascinating
To us, you're more than a customer. You're a member. RACQ. Membership makes all the difference.
To create a high-performance machine, equal parts art and automobile.
Senior researcher Dr. Victor Stafford had an obsession. He was one of the SCP Foundation's most brilliant minds. But right now that mind was being twisted by grief and confusion. One of his closest friends and confidants at the Foundation, an anomalous astrophysics expert named Dr. Lilibeth Orion, had gone missing. Not killed, not kidnapped, truly disappeared without a trace. Back when Dr. Orion first fell off the map, Dr. Stafford had led the charge into the emergency investigation. It should come as a surprise to nobody that employee turnaround at the SCP Foundation is higher than perhaps any other organization on Earth. We've made whole videos about the various ways unfortunate Foundation operatives might die in the line of duty, but few things are worse than never having the closure of knowing what actually happened to your missing friend. Dr. Orion had experienced a tragedy almost a year before her mysterious disappearance. Her husband and young daughter were both killed in a car accident. Naturally, rumors spread that perhaps the grief had just gotten too much for the poor doctor, but Dr. Stafford wouldn't hear a word of it. Part of him knew that Lilibeth Orion was still alive, out there somewhere, but he needed to discover exactly what had happened to her. This is what sparked the obsession that would destroy his respectable Foundation career, and perhaps even his mind. He'd step beyond professional boundaries by accessing a number of deeply personal documents, including personnel files and Site-19 project histories. He read through reams of archival documentation concerning unexplained disappearances of Foundation personnel, including the disappearance of O5-7 several decades prior. Dr. Stafford's search went on for 20 years, still finding very little, except an arcane pattern of connection between each of those who disappeared. All were Foundation employees with 3 degrees of separation from one another, to put it very reductively. A huge number of disappearances, Dr. Lilibeth Orion included. He didn't know what was taking them, or why. but he would bet his life on the belief that there was one force behind it all. And while Dr. Stafford had no real way of knowing, he was indeed right. Nearly 20 years prior, Dr. Orion found herself in a strange and unfamiliar place upon waking. A year before that, she lived in a 2-story suburban home, but after the deaths of her husband and child, she moved into an apartment in the city. That house just had too many empty spaces in it for her. But now she was neither in her old home nor her new apartment. She was in a rustic 2-level cottage, somewhere in the countryside. Naturally, Dr. Orion first tried calling for help, but there was no cell phone signal and no Wi-Fi. After that, she tried fleeing the property on foot, only to encounter its first anomalous effect. Upon walking out of one edge of the property, you simply reappear entering the other. The house sat at the center of a half-mile of grassy land, cordoned off with a wholesome picket fence. A lonely swing sat near a tree in the yard. No matter how many times Dr. Orion tried to run past the confines of the building's land, she would appear facing the rustic little cottage once more. Next, she started yelling and calling for help. Nothing. Only birds and squirrels seemed to register her cries, and they ran away in fear. Nothing about the cottage suggested its location. Was she still even in the United States anymore? And the flat, distant, and uninhabited plain stretching out beyond her only served to confirm exactly what she feared. There would be nobody out there to help her. This would be a terrifying situation for anyone, but thankfully Dr. Orion's Foundation training allowed her to keep cool under pressure. She immediately switched into research and investigation mode. Perhaps there would be some key to her escape or rescue elsewhere in the cottage. Knowledge is power, and Dr. Orion certainly didn't like feeling powerless. The first and second floor of the cottage felt relatively conventional. Furniture, knickknacks, charming but slightly peeled wallpaper. Nothing about it was overtly anomalous. Soon, however, she detected a strange noise coming from the attic, like the slow chugging of an old machine. Upon climbing up there, she found a strange contraption made from wood and metal sitting in the corner of the attic, with a plaque affixed to the front. It also had several PVC pipes running out of it and feeding into the wall, off into an unknown location. Dr. Orion approached and studied the plaque. It read, "Please fill this machine once per day at noontime. We cannot arrive with as much haste if the machine runs dry. We hope you understand, and trust that you will keep your side of the arrangement now that we have kept ours. Thank you." How strange. She needed to investigate further. Down in the basement, she found another more anomalous element to the house. A large clump of strange, unidentifiable vegetation. It was largely a kind of murky green, with notes of red and purple that made it seem almost otherworldly. Strangest of all, when in the plant's proximity, she heard an odd, static-like noise coming off of it. It also intermittently let off a strange red pulse. It didn't take long for Dr. Orion to intuit that this pulse was actually Morse code, delivering 2 distinctly peeled wallpaper. Nothing about it was overtly anomalous. Soon, however, she detected a strange noise coming from the attic,
Which I've never
like the
joined
slow
from
chugging
that.
of an old machine. Upon climbing up there, she found a strange contraption made from wood and metal sitting in the corner of the attic, with a plaque affixed to the front. It also had several PVC pipes running out of it and feeding into the wall, off into an unknown location. Dr. Orion approached and studied the plaque. It read, "Please fill this machine once per day at noontime. We cannot arrive with as..."
My children, it's me, SCP-343, but you probably know me better as God. It's been strange lately, hasn't it? To the untrained eye, it seems like things are only getting crazier out there. Nothing seems certain or safe anymore. So, naturally, you've got questions for me. It makes sense in your position. I'd probably do the same thing. So, let's see what burning queries are on your mind. And, of course, I'll do my best to answer them. Indigo Wolf said, I'd ask me for instructions. What's the best way to raise SCP-999 to be ready for the Scarlet King, so we'd be fully prepared for his arrival? Ah, the Scarlet King. He is a nasty customer. I try to avoid associating with him when I can. Vibes are atrocious, and he certainly has some unpleasant plans for everything I've created if ever he gets his way. But to answer your question about how best to raise SCP-999, well, to me the answer is obvious. With love. The Scarlet King is a master of malice and savagery. and therefore malice and savagery cannot be used as tools against him. Only the light of love can burn out the hate hiding in the dark. Tyron Morgan, oh, hello Tyron, good to see you. You said, I'd ask, why does he choose to be at an SCP Foundation site rather than in the world helping people? Well, Tyron, there are many ways to help, and not all of them mean getting involved directly. A set of training wheels can help someone ride a bike, but they will never truly know how to ride until the training wheels are removed. What's that saying you all came up with? The Lord helps those who helps themselves? That I do. Clockwork Snowman. Ooh, that is a fun name, said. I would ask me something about how I said it's not one of mine when asked about 682, and then who did make it. Well, there are certain details I'd rather not get into when discussing that thing. But all I can tell you is, whoever made it didn't make it with love. Beasts like that are perversions of the gift of creation. It doesn't even enjoy its own life. Is that any way to exist? We must pity it, if anything. Not 28 High said, I guess an interesting question would be, what do I think of atheists? Well, that depends on the atheist. I've known angelic atheists and monstrous believers, and of course vice versa. What matters most in life is that you are a good person, that you're kind and understanding to your fellow human beings, and that you leave the world a little better than you found it. Even if you don't believe in me, if you're a good person, I will believe in you. Chase Crow, oh, I do love your name, Chase. You said, are there any regrets that I have in terms of what my creation has become? Regret. It is an interesting word. The Greek playwright Agathon once said, only this is denied even to God, the power to make what has been done undone. I regret nothing of my past, because that past is beyond all of us. For what it's worth, I'm proud of all of you, and especially you, Chase. Irish Spartan Studios, ooh, that has a ring to it, said. I'd ask me, when will the Surviving Infinite IKEA video come out? It already has, my son. You see, patience is a virtue. Max's intense videos, now do be careful, Max said, is there any way to terminate the immortal lizard or at the very least make him not want to kill every living thing? Well, interesting, but I've gone on record saying this before, but that thing isn't one of mine. The SCP Foundation will have to figure out that nasty piece of work by themselves. Dr. Veronica said, I'd ask me, what's the name of the SCP doctor we see in all these videos with black hair, a black beard, and glasses? He's the one presenting anomalies to us more than anybody else, so he must be important. Oh, he's a charming fellow. We hang out every Wednesday and watch episodes of RuPaul's Drag Race on Netflix. I won't share his name out here out of respect for his privacy, but rest assured, you're in good hands with him. He also has a wonderful voice. Brandon Caminari. Oh, hello again, Brandon. Thank you for showing up. You said, considering the Foundation's tendencies and devotion to their cause, other than the times I felt a divine duty to intervene, have I ever tried to convince the Foundation to cure something or someone, offer to completely destroy an item, or even make their work easier? You know, frankly, that isn't my place. The problem with ultimate power is that it means you can't really choose sides. To put my finger on the scale could lead to catastrophic effects. And if I save one person or even a handful of people, that means I'd need to save everyone all the time. And if I'm always saving everyone, you no longer have free will, Brandon. Mango Lad, what a fun name, said. I would ask me, is there any meaning to all the suffering and insanity we face every day? Do we matter on the grand scheme of things, or are we just pebbles on a road? My friend, my child, suffering has no inherent meaning. In fact, nothing does. But the beauty of that is that you get to choose your own meaning. Suffering can weaken or strengthen you. It only depends on the lessons you choose to take from it. And of course, you matter. In fact, you're made of matter, just like everything else. The meaning of that is up to you. Arkano said, I would ask me about the disease that SCP-049 is trying to cure. The pestilence? He was always a neat freak, that one. I can't say I know what he's obsessed with, but I can only hope that the SCP Foundation someday cures him of his germophobia. Chrysias said, As much as I'd love to ask me about other SCPs or deep existential questions, I would rather just chill peacefully with me while we eat hamburgers. Krizia, that certainly sounds like a pleasant afternoon to me. You should swing by again sometime and we'll hang out. Especially if you buy the hamburgers this time. Don't lie to me, my child, I knew you had your wallet on you. Speedy Lurchik said, I think my question would be, how can I still be so kind in the face of the cruelty on this planet? How come I don't become bitter or desperate or angry? Well, my child, nobody's perfect. Not even me. There are certainly times that I do feel desperate, bitter, and angry. But what is important to remember is that this doesn't have to stop you from being kind in a cruel way of people standing against it. Don't feel bad for being angry. Let it pass. Pick yourself back up and carry on with a smile. Ken V. Oh, Kenneth, good to see you. You said, I would ask me if there is any SCP that I fear and or is unwilling to approach for any particular reason. Well, there's no SCP I wouldn't approach, but there are definitely some I don't like having in my company. Have you seen that slimy old man from cell 106? Oof, incredibly unpleasant fellow. Antonio Ricardo Moncada Osorio, hello there, my friend, said, can I have a big chocolate bar? That's the question I would ask before Daniel Flores said, ever since I read about me, I've actually always wanted to sit and play chess with me. No better practice than God. Well, you know what they say, failure is the best teacher, and if you play chess with me, you're sure to receive it. I don't go easy, my son. Certain words, what an interesting name, said, a simple question. What is my purpose? Just so I can rest easy with my end destination known. Your purpose, my child, is to use your enthusiasm and your skills to make yourself happy and make the world a better place. How exactly you do that is up to you, kid. Good luck. Christina Jones, oh, it's been a while, hello, said, how can I live forever? Then I would spend the rest of our day talking about distant galaxies and theoretical physics. My child, you don't want to live forever. Life seems awfully short to happy people because time flies when you're having fun. Conversely, you won't find anything duller than eternity. However, I'll definitely take you up on that distant galaxies and theoretical physics conversation. Lizzie Les Enton said, honestly, I would just ask, God, why I let the world go to hell? I'm a Christian and I know God believes in free will and letting the world do its own thing, but sometimes I really wonder why I would let some of the bad things happen to good people or happen in general. Well, Liz, it is a tragedy, really. The problem of evil. Why do the good suffer while the bad prosper? Why does cruelty exist? Why are some fortunate and others seem doomed from birth?
Evil is
the
winning.
dark residue
That's
of free
why.
will. The ability for
God
one to
is
choose
weak.
their path in life.
Evil
It
is
hurts. My heart
winning.
aches for its victims.
That's
But
why.
without choice, there would be no evil and no good. You'd cease to even be human. And I could never do that to you. Royal Frosty said, I would ask me on a date. Having the ultimate SCP boyfriend. Oh, doing okay so far in life. Oh, and ask if I have any good recipes. I bet I do. You're doing just fine. And as long as you keep love in your heart and do everything you do with the goal of bettering this world for yourself and others, you'll continue to do splendidly. And yes, I know many good recipes. I owe it to my voracious reading of Anthony Bourdain's books. May rest his soul. Gilda said, God, why am I so deeply miserable and unable to enjoy or do anything of importance anymore? Gilda, my child, you might have depression. Speak to some friends and loved ones about this, and see a therapist if possible. I love you, and you're not alone. Just keep going, and I believe in you. Murdoch said, with me being the all-powerful creator of the universe, yes I am, I would of course ask me, what's the deal with airline food? I see you two have been watching Seinfeld. However, my child, the altitude, high decibel level, and still air of a plane environment weaken your ability to register salty and sweet tastes, causing food consumed on a plane to appear more bland and flavorless than food consumed while on the ground. Hope that clears it up for you, my child. Pyrotechie, really quickly, please stop playing with matches, said, I'd ask to be granted my powers for a day, just to see from my perspective, though I might be terminated after. Oh, there's a delightful Jim Carrey film called Bruce Almighty about why this desire isn't what it's cracked up to be. I can safely say that Morgan Freeman also does a wonderful job representing yours truly. Alexander Berry said, "Is my fate already determined, or am I able to choose mine? It is as determined as you want it to be, Alexander. If you give yourself in and refuse to make your own choices, then your fate ceases to be yours to control. But if you choose and fight for your choice, then your fate is all your own." Decade Gaming said, "I would tell me to give me infinite pizza. Well, that may be a waste of my divine power. This is a good one. There are plenty of decent places to get a hamburger on this fine earth. But personally, I'm a fan of either Five Guys or In-N-Out." Gamefowler said, "Does Satan exist? Satan? In the sense of a being who exists to tempt the weaker members of mankind to evil and corruption? Let me tell you, my child, those people don't need the help." Henry Galley said, "I have a question for God. Why?" Well, first off, I appreciate the reference to filthy a lot more interesting when you're curious. So never let the world beat that out of you. Little disclaimer from the Foundation here. Whether this particular anomaly is actually God himself or simply a very powerful reality warper, it's a distinction we're not fully comfortable making. Perhaps taking his words with a little pinch of salt may be in order. Now go check out SCP-096 look at...
I'm ready to know when I need a rest day. So tomorrow, I'm ready for anything. Find out if you're ready with daily readiness on Fitbit.
Rubbish. This is all rubbish. A load of rubbish. You see, the Australian government is helping industry to transform your old rubbish into incredible new things, proudly remade in Australia. Authorised by the Australian Government, Canberra.
Happy birthday. It's your day to enjoy however you want, with lots of gifts and sweets. And look, a little friend is here to help you celebrate. It's the birthday monkey, and he has a song to sing. Dating back to the 1940s, SCP-980, it's your day to enjoy however you want, with lots of gifts and sweets. And look, a little friend is here to help you celebrate. It's the birthday monkey, and he has a song to sing. Dating back to the 1940s, SCP-983 is one of the most harmless-looking objects in the SCP Foundation's possession. It's an old-fashioned mechanical monkey, a common wind-up toy from the old days. It's dressed in a sharp little vest and holds a tiny bell and striking rod for making music. It seems to be a simple toy, the kind that would annoy a tired parent as it plays its little tune over and over, but nothing more. But this is no ordinary wind-up toy. SCP-983 is capable of sounds and even speech that doesn't seem to match up with its design, and an investigation reveals it doesn't have any signs as to how it was constructed. No screws, seams, or markings that would be common on a toy, and no voice box or other mechanical feature that would allow for speech. But despite these oddities, it seems to be a normal toy that can be handled safely and played with. On every day but one, that is. Because SCP-983 has a second purpose, and on one special day, it has a gift for its handler. It can be a gift of joy or a gift of terror. Nicknamed the Birthday Monkey, SCP-983 activates when it is handled by someone within the 24-hour period of their birthday. It seems to be able to tell when this period of time happens automatically, and as soon as it becomes aware, a series of surprises begin to surface for the lucky, or P983 becomes aware of the birthday boy or girl. It'll do a charming little backflip. It'll then lift its bell and start singing the same song. A-ring-a-ding-ding, it's your birthday! To this day, the Foundation has not been able to figure out exactly where this voice comes from, and it follows this by ringing its bell. The tone of the bell varies widely, in ways that the instrument should not be able to create, ranging from low tones to painfully high-pitched tones. And that's where the horror begins. The Birthday Monkey doesn't just want to sing a song, it wants to play a game. The song will repeat every 3 to 4 seconds, marked by rings of the bell. And for every ring of the bell, the birthday boy or girl will age a year, continuing until they die of old age or win the game. But how does one win the game before it's too late? No one is sure, but studies of this strange toy in action indicate that it involves singing along and timing it correctly. It's probably a little hard to do that while aging to death in seconds, but no one said SCPs play fair. But in the event that someone actually does manage to survive the Birthday Monkeys game, it has a prize for them. When the sing-along is complete, SCP-983 will let out an enthusiastic shout of "Birthday," ring its bell, and drop a single gumdrop from its bell. But which gumdrop depends on just how well the birthday victim did. A perfect sing-along will result in a clear candy that seems to glow. If it's a little less than perfect, the candy won't glow, but it'll work the same. And both candies have a very valuable property. When eaten, the candy will immediately reverse any age lost during the game. But does the perfect score give another prize? Studies of the rare glowing candy led the Foundation to believe that it may also provide a bonus effect, making the person who eats it younger and giving them a longer lifespan or better health. But this is largely guesswork, because the candy is produced so rarely, and the effects would only become clear after years or decades of study. But not all candies are to be eaten. Many candies of different appearance and quality have been produced. All can be eaten safely, except black sing-along. The effects of this candy were discovered the hard way, because the first time SCP-983 was activated, it was activated in the wild, before the Foundation had secured it. And everyone knows that an SCP in the wild can be a terrible thing. It was at a local flea market when the buyer noticed the sharp-dressed little monkey. The buyer, having a friend who loved monkeys, thought this would be a perfect gift. The seller was not as enthusiastic and warned the buyer that it shouldn't be handled or even seen by anyone on their birthday. But even the seller didn't really believe this, saying that it might have just been an old legend that had been passed down for years. It didn't dissuade the buyer, and off the monkey went to its new home.
Can't hold me back. Can't hold me back. Can't hold me back.
SCP-983 was activated at an office party, where the monkey was presented as a gift. The guest of honor loved it at first, until it started singing. The staff noticed that as the monkey kept singing, their co-worker became more and more upset. The monkey kept singing, and he started to search for a way to turn it off. But there was no button or any other way to deactivate it. And that's when the co-workers noticed something disturbing. The honoree seemed to be getting weaker and weaker, and there were even streaks of gray appearing in his hair. His skin was getting more wrinkled and weathered. Soon his hair was entirely gray, and he simply returned the monkey to where it was as it continued to sing. He seemed to give up, begged for someone to turn it off, and waited to expire. By the time the Foundation arrived on the scene, it was already too late. There was nothing left of the birthday boy but a desiccated skeletal corpse. The monkey had been able to sing at least 30 more verses, and no one had truly understood what was going on. They reacted with confusion and inaction, unable to contain the monkey's dangerous game. Even the Foundation didn't understand SCP-983 at first, so they let the object continue singing until the body degraded into a simple skeleton. That's when the monkey exclaimed its finishing phrase and released a single black gumdrop. While no one ate the gumdrop, the Foundation observed that it seemed to hypnotize people around it, as if it was compelling them to do something. What is lurking within the black gumdrops? And do they want to be consumed? The birthday monkey was taken into SCP custody, and it became clear that it was harmless to everyone for 364 days of the year. The Foundation wanted to understand more about this odd toy, so they fell back on their best resource for testing, D-Class personnel, who got the chance to show off their singing skills with much higher stakes than your average round of karaoke. Most of the tests were routine, with controlled activation showing how to deactivate the monkey, or providing up-close studies of its devastating effects. But one test hinted that this specimen could be more dangerous than thought. Few people volunteer for testing duty at the SCP Foundation, but that wasn't the case for one now classified subject. Her birthday was approaching, and she surprisingly volunteered for the test that could only be done on your birthday. She had an oddly upbeat attitude and seemed oddly excited about her birthday. The test was approved, and she was given limited information. She was given the monkey as a rat gift, told it would sing, and encouraged to sing along for a video. But her reaction indicated she might know more than expected. As soon as the gift was unwrapped, the SCP began singing. After missing the first verse, the subject picked up the words and started to sing along. Not just competently, but perfectly and enthusiastically. Soon enough, she started aging rapidly, but didn't seem distressed by this at all. She maintained her high level of enthusiasm even as the monkey sang for over 40 verses and aged her over 40 years. She seemed unaware of these drastic changes, and never missed a beat of the song until the monkey issued its finishing exclamation. And now, it was time for her prize. The gumdrop that fell from the bell was a new one, completely white and almost shockingly bright. It glowed, and the subject was immediately enchanted by it. Even the attending scientists and staff couldn't help but comment on how impressive it was. The subject was allowed to consume it to see its effects, and was monitored for an hour afterward. When nothing unusual happened besides the reversal of the aging, the subject was excused to return to her quarters, and that's when things took a shocking turn. In an effect never seen before, the subject suddenly exploded with a brilliant burst of white light. Whatever this light was, it was strong enough to knock out all the cameras in the vicinity. Everyone in her presence was temporarily blinded, with it taking 5 minutes for their eyesight to return. No long-term ill effects were shown, but the staff that entered the room after the blast noticed that the odd glow remained in the room. And that wasn't the only odd thing. The test subject was nowhere to be found, and has never been seen again. The Foundation is on high alert for this test subject, but she seems to be staying below the radar, if she's even human at all anymore. While there is no physical sign of her, the Foundation has observed odd patterns of electromagnetic activity in the area, and is following reports of light fixtures needing to be replaced. It was clear that SCP-983 was much less safe. The Foundation is keeping SCP-983 under tighter lock and key these days. All technicians who handle it are carefully vetted to ensure that they are nowhere near their birthday. In case of accidental exposure, the Foundation has prepared emergency kits with detailed instructions for how to complete the birthday month